Hello everyone, welcome back to Talk Fluent. We're so happy you're here with us today. If you're trying to sound more natural in English and understand the little differences that native speakers use every day, you're in the right place. Today's lesson is one of those topics that seems easy until you actually start speaking. Then suddenly you stop and think, wait, should I say unless or if not? Don't worry because we're going to make it simple.
Hey everyone, it's great to have you with us again. I love today's topic because even advanced English learners mix these two up. And honestly, some native speakers don't even think about the grammar. They just know what sounds right. Today, we're going to help you build that same feeling.
I remember when one of my friends was learning English. She wanted to say, if you don't hurry, you'll miss the bus. But instead she said, unless you hurry, you'll miss the bus not. We both laughed because the meaning got completely mixed up. That's when I realized this tiny grammar point can make a huge difference.
Exactly, today we're talking about the real difference between unless and if not, and more importantly, how Americans actually use them in everyday conversations. We'll explain the grammar, give you lots of examples, show you common mistakes, and help you sound more confident.
By the end of this episode, you'll know when the two expressions mean almost the same thing, when they can't replace each other, and how to use them naturally at work, with friends, at school, or while traveling. You'll even be able to catch mistakes before you say them.
Before we jump in, we want to hear from you. Have you ever been confused by unless and if not? Or maybe you've made a funny mistake with them before. Tell us in the comments because your experience might help another learner too.
And if you're enjoying these practical English lessons, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Talk Fluent. Every week we share lessons that help your English sound more like real American English instead of textbook English.
All right, everybody. Grab a notebook if you like or just listen along, and let's dive into the first step of understanding how unless and if not really work.
Let's begin with the basic idea. In many situations, unless means the same as if not. That's the easiest way to remember it. Think of unless as meaning except if. It introduces the only condition that can change the result.
Here's the simple structure. Subject plus will plus action plus unless plus subject plus present verb. Or you can say, subject plus will plus action plus if plus subject plus do or does plus not plus verb. Listen to these examples. You'll be late unless you leave now. You'll be late if you don't leave now. I'll call you unless my phone dies. I'll call you if my phone doesn't die. Wait, that's actually different. The correct opposite would be, I'll call you if my phone doesn't die, but notice how the meaning changes. That's why understanding the condition is important. The store will close unless we get there soon. The store will close if we don't get there soon.
That's a great point. You can't just replace every unless with if not without thinking about the meaning. You have to ask yourself, what's the condition? Once you understand the condition, choosing the right expression becomes much easier. Think about this sentence. I won't eat dessert unless I'm really hungry. That means I'll only eat dessert if I'm really hungry. It's a condition. Being hungry changes the outcome. Now compare it with, I won't eat dessert if I'm not really hungry. The meaning is almost the same, but many native speakers feel that unless sounds smoother and more natural in conversation.
Here are a few more examples you might hear every day. Don't call me unless it's important. Don't call me if it's not important. You can't enter unless you have a ticket. You can't enter if you don't have a ticket. We'll go hiking unless it rains. We'll go hiking if it doesn't rain. Hold on, that's actually the opposite idea. The matching sentence is, we won't go hiking if it rains. This shows why you should focus on meaning instead of replacing words automatically.
That's one of the biggest learning tips today. Don't memorize words by themselves. Memorize ideas. Native speakers usually think about the situation, not the grammar rule. For example, every morning I tell myself, I'm going for a walk unless it's pouring outside. I don't stop and think about grammar. I just know that heavy rain is the only thing that will stop me. What about you? Can you think of one thing you do every day unless something unexpected happens? Write your sentence in the comments. We'd love to read it.
Here's another relatable example from my life. I make coffee every morning unless I oversleep. If I wake up late, I skip it and rush out the door. That's a simple real-life condition. Now let me ask you something. Can you finish this sentence? I always answer my phone unless. Maybe you say, unless I'm driving, or unless I'm in a meeting, or unless I'm sleeping. Say your answer out loud. Speaking is one of the fastest ways to improve your fluency.
Let's talk about negative forms because this is where many learners get confused. Unless already contains a negative meaning. Because of that, you usually don't use another negative word after it. For example, correct. Unless you study, you'll fail the test. Incorrect. Unless you don't study, you'll fail the test. That second sentence sounds wrong because you're creating a double negative idea. Instead, remember this simple trick. After unless, use a positive verb. Unless you hurry, unless she calls, unless they arrive. not unless you don't hurry in most situations.
That's such an easy memory trick. Think of unless as already carrying the idea of if not. So adding another not usually creates confusion. Let's practice together. Can you complete these sentences? I won't buy it unless. We can't start unless. My friends won't come unless. Try saying them before you hear our examples. I won't buy it unless it's on sale. We can't start unless everyone is here. My friends won't come unless I invite them. How did you do? If you created different answers, share one in the comments. It's great practice for everyone watching.
Another thing you'll notice is that Americans often use unless because it's shorter and sounds more conversational. Instead of saying, if you don't call me before 6, I'll leave, many people simply say, I'll leave unless you call me before 6. The message is clear and direct. First, identify the condition. Second, ask what changes the result. Third, decide if unless expresses that condition naturally. These 3 steps will help you every time. Before we move on, here's one more challenge. Think about your weekend plans and make one sentence using unless. Maybe it's, I'm going to the beach unless the weather changes. Or, I'm staying home unless my friends invite me out. Leave your example below because practicing with your own life makes new grammar stick much faster.
So let's quickly wrap up this first lesson. Unless usually means if not, but you should focus on the meaning instead of swapping the words automatically. Remember that unless normally takes a positive verb because the negative idea is already built in. The more you connect it to real situations, the more natural your English will sound. And that's exactly how Americans actually use it in everyday conversations.
Now that you've got the basic idea, let's build on it with something even more useful. In real conversations, unless isn't just a grammar word. It's a way to express conditions quickly and naturally. Native speakers use it all the time because it's short, smooth, and easy to understand.
That's right, if you watch American movies or listen to podcasts, you'll hear sentences like, don't text me unless it's urgent, or I'm not leaving unless you're coming too. Nobody stops to think about the grammar. They simply use unless because it feels natural.
Here's another way to think about it. Unless often sets one exception to a general rule. For example, I usually cook dinner every night unless I'm working late. The general rule is that I cook dinner. The exception is working late. That's exactly what unless does. It introduces the exception.
Let's compare a few examples. I wear sneakers every day unless I'm attending a formal event. She studies every evening unless she's visiting her grandparents. We order pizza on Fridays unless someone wants to cook. You can almost hear people saying these in everyday life.
Now let's imagine a real conversation. I'm inviting friends over tonight unless my neighbor complains about the noise.
Really? Then I'll bring snacks unless someone else already bought them.
Perfect, and I'll order drinks unless everyone wants coffee instead.
See how easy that sounds? We're talking naturally while using conditions without making the sentences complicated.
Here's another situation many of you can relate to. You're planning a vacation, you might say, we're flying next month unless ticket prices go up. Or maybe, we're staying at a hotel unless we find a cheaper apartment. These are exactly the kinds of sentences Americans use when making plans.
Here's a cultural tip. In casual American English, people often choose shorter expressions. Instead of saying, if it's not absolutely necessary, don't wake me up, someone might simply say, don't wake me up unless it's absolutely necessary. It sounds smoother and less wordy.
But what about formal English? In business emails or professional writing, both forms are acceptable. For example, if you do not receive the package by Friday, please contact customer service. Or, please contact customer service unless you receive the package by Friday. Both are grammatically correct, but the first version is often clearer in formal writing because it leaves less room for misunderstanding.
Exactly. In casual conversations, people usually value speed and simplicity. In formal documents, clarity often comes first. So learning both styles gives you more flexibility.
Let's practice with some real-life examples. Imagine your friend asks, are you coming to the barbecue? You could answer, yeah, unless something comes up. That's an expression Americans use all the time. Something comes up means something unexpected happens.
Here's another common one. I'm going to the gym after work unless I'm completely exhausted. Notice that you're not saying you'll skip the gym, you're saying there's one possible exception.
Let's try a dialogue. My sister wants to go shopping tomorrow.
Sounds fun, are you going with her?
Sure, unless I have to finish a work project.
Then let's hope your boss doesn't send you any last-minute emails.
That's exactly how natural conversations flow. Now it's your turn, finish this sentence. I'm going to watch this video again unless, maybe you say, unless I understand everything the first time. Or, unless my internet stops working. Write your answer in the comments and practice using your own experiences.
Here's another tip. First, identify the normal plan. Second, identify the one thing that could change it. Third, introduce that exception with unless. If you practice those 3 steps, you'll start using unless automatically.
Let's also look at situations where if not feels more natural. Suppose you're giving instructions. If you don't know the answer, ask your teacher. That's a very common way to give advice. You could rewrite it with unless, but most people naturally choose if you don't because they're directly talking about the listener's action.
Exactly. Grammar books sometimes make it seem like these expressions are interchangeable all the time. Real conversations are different. Native speakers choose whichever sounds clearer and easier in the moment. That's why listening to authentic English is so valuable.
Before we finish this section, here's a quick practice challenge. Complete these sentences. I'll stay home unless, we won't order food unless, my family won't travel unless. There are hundreds of correct answers. The important thing is connecting the grammar to your own life. And don't forget to leave one of your examples in the comments. Reading other learners' sentences is a great way to discover new ideas and improve your English naturally.
So here's the key takeaway. Unless introduces the exception to a normal situation, while if not often appears naturally in instructions and direct conditions. Understanding the idea behind the sentence is much more important than memorizing a rule, and that's what will help your English sound authentic.
Let's move into another everyday use that often surprises learners. This one is all about making requests, setting boundaries, and sounding natural in conversations with friends, family, and coworkers.
One thing Americans do all the time is use unless to set limits politely. For example, don't open the package unless I tell you. Don't spend the money unless you really need it. Don't interrupt unless it's an emergency. These don't sound rude. They simply establish one condition where the action is acceptable.
That's an important point. The tone stays calm because you're giving permission under a specific condition instead of saying a direct no. Compare these, don't bother me, and don't bother me unless it's important. The second sentence sounds much friendlier because it leaves the door open for an important reason.
The same thing happens in workplaces. A manager might say, don't schedule another meeting unless everyone agrees. Or don't send the email unless you've checked the numbers. These sentences sound professional while giving clear instructions.
Here's a conversation between friends. I'm thinking about buying a new phone this weekend.
Really, your current one still works?
I know, I'm not buying one unless I find a huge discount.
That's smart. Sometimes waiting saves a lot of money.
Notice how unless expresses a condition without making the sentence complicated. Now imagine another situation. You're trying to eat healthier. You tell your friend, I'm not eating fast food unless there's absolutely no other choice. That sounds very natural in American English.
Let's compare casual and slightly more formal language. Casual, I'm not calling unless he calls first. More formal, I won't contact him unless he contacts me first. Both work perfectly. The difference is mainly vocabulary and style, not grammar.
Here's a quick activity. I'll give you a situation and you think of an answer. Your friend wants you to stay out until midnight, but you have work tomorrow. You might say, I'll stay unless I start feeling tired. Or, I'll stay unless I have to wake up early. There are many possibilities. Speaking these sentences out loud will train your brain to think in English instead of translating.
Here's another tip. Pay attention to collocations. Native speakers often say, unless you have time, unless you're sure, unless it's necessary, unless you're ready, unless something changes. Learning these common combinations will make your speech much more fluent.
First, practice one sentence every day. Second, listen for unless in movies, podcasts, or TV shows. Third, replace simple if not sentences with unless when it sounds natural. Little by little, your confidence will grow. We'd love another challenge from you. Write one sentence about your job, your studies, or your weekend plans using unless. The more personal your example is, the easier it will be to remember.
Let's review this section. We learned that unless is perfect for setting exceptions, making polite limits, and talking about everyday conditions. We also saw how formal and informal English can use the same grammar with different vocabulary choices. Most importantly, natural English comes from understanding the situation, not from memorizing complicated rules.
We've covered the basic meaning of unless and how Americans naturally use it in daily conversations. Now let's look at one of the most important parts of today's lesson, common mistakes. Don't worry if you've made these errors before. Almost every English learner has, and even native speakers sometimes say things that aren't perfectly clear.
That's so true. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is communication. But fixing a few common mistakes can make your English sound much more natural.
Mistake number 1 is using a double negative after unless. Here's the incorrect sentence. Unless you don't study, you'll fail the test. And here's the correct version: unless you study, you'll fail the test. Why is the first one wrong? Because unless already contains the idea of if not. Adding another don't creates an unnecessary negative meaning that confuses the listener.
Let's compare them side by side. Incorrect, unless you don't hurry, we'll miss the train. Correct, unless you hurry, we'll miss the train. Incorrect, unless she doesn't call, I'll leave. Correct, unless she calls, I'll leave. Whenever you use unless, remember that the verb after it is usually positive.
Here's a funny example. Imagine your mom says, unless you don't clean your room, we're getting pizza. You'd probably stop and ask, wait, so should I clean it or not? The sentence creates confusion because of the double negative. Keeping it simple avoids misunderstandings.
Practice with us, say the correct sentence. Unless you finish your homework, maybe you completed it with, you can't watch TV. Great job, now try another one. Unless it stops raining, we'll stay inside. Excellent.
Mistake number 2 is replacing every if not with unless. Remember, they often have similar meanings, but they're not always interchangeable. Look at this sentence. If you don't understand, ask a question. Most native speakers naturally use if you don't hear because it's a direct instruction. Changing it to unless you understand, ask a question sounds awkward and less natural. Always think about the message before changing the words.
Here's another comparison. If you're not busy, come over. That's a friendly invitation. Unless you're busy, come over. This version also works, but it emphasizes the exception differently. The meaning is close, but the feeling changes slightly. That's why listening to real conversations is so valuable.
Mistake number 3 is translating directly from your first language. Many learners try to convert every sentence word by word, but English doesn't always work that way. Instead of translating, try learning complete phrases. For example, call me unless you're driving. Don't leave unless I text you. I won't go unless you're coming. These become natural chunks that you can use without thinking about grammar every time.
Here's another common error. Some learners avoid unless completely because they're afraid of making mistakes. Then they use if, not in every sentence. There's nothing wrong with that, but your English may sound less natural in casual conversations. Adding unless to your vocabulary makes your speech more flexible and more like everyday American English.
Here's a humorous situation. Imagine your friend asks, "Are you joining us for dinner?" You reply, "I'm coming if I'm not busy, if I'm not tired, if I'm not working, if I'm not sick." Your friend might laugh and say, "So, are you coming or not?" A much smoother answer would be, "I'm coming unless something unexpected happens." Short, clear, and natural.
Let's practice each mistake. Correct this sentence. Unless you don't practice, your English won't improve. The correct version is, unless you practice, your English won't improve. Now try this one. If you don't have plans, join us. Would you always replace it with unless? No, sometimes keeping if you don't sounds more conversational. Think about meaning first.
One last reminder. Making mistakes means you're using the language. That's a good thing. Every correction brings you one step closer to sounding fluent. Don't be afraid to experiment with new grammar in conversations, comments, or journal writing.
Let's wrap up this section. Avoid double negatives after unless. Don't replace every if not automatically, and learn complete expressions instead of translating word for word. If you keep practicing, these patterns will soon feel completely natural.
Now it's time for a fun challenge. Let's play Choose the Correct Sentence. Listen to each situation, pick the better answer, and say it out loud before we explain it. Situation number 1. Your friend says, "I'm thinking about skipping class." Option A, unless you don't go, you'll miss the lesson. Option B, if you don't go, you'll miss the lesson. Which one sounds better?
The answer is option B, if you don't go, you'll miss the lesson. The first sentence contains a confusing double negative, so native speakers would avoid it.
Situation number 2, you're planning a picnic. Option A, we'll have a picnic unless it rains. Option B, we'll have a picnic if it doesn't rain. Which one would Americans use?
Honestly, both are correct. Option A sounds a little smoother and more conversational. Option B is equally correct and very common. This is a perfect example of two different ways to express almost the same idea.
Situation number 3, your phone should stay silent during a meeting. Option A, don't call me unless it's urgent. Option B, don't call me if it's urgent. Which one is right?
Option A, of course. The sentence means that an emergency is the only exception. That's exactly what unless is designed to express.
Situation number 4, your friend invites you to a movie. Option A, I'm coming unless I have to work late. Option B, I'm coming unless I don't have to work late. Which one sounds natural?
Option A again, avoid adding an unnecessary negative after unless. Keep the verb positive.
Situation number 5, your teacher says, if you don't understand today's lesson, ask me after class. Could you also say, unless you understand today's lesson, ask me after class? Technically, people would understand you, but the first version sounds much more natural because it's a direct instruction. That's why context matters.
Here's another challenge. Create your own sentence using unless about your family, your job, or your weekend plans. Then create another sentence using if not. Speaking both versions out loud will help you notice the small differences naturally.
Don't worry if you need a few tries. Fluency grows through repetition. The more you practice with real situations from your own life, the faster these grammar patterns become automatic.
And remember, real conversations are more important than perfect grammar. If people understand you and you keep improving, you're already succeeding.
We've covered so much today. We learned that unless usually means except if or if not. We explored how Americans naturally use it in conversations, and we discovered why understanding the meaning behind the sentence is more important than memorizing grammar rules.
Let's quickly review the three biggest ideas from today's lesson. First, unless introduces the one exception that changes the result. Second, if not and unless are often similar but they're not always interchangeable. Third, avoiding double negatives after unless will make your English much clearer and more natural.
If today's lesson helped you, be proud of yourself. Every new grammar point you master gives you more confidence to speak English in real life. Don't worry about making mistakes. Keep talking, keep listening, and keep practicing because that's how fluent speakers are made.
Here's one final question for you. What's one sentence you can use today with unless? Maybe it's about work, school, your family, or your hobbies. Write it in the comments and read a few other answers too. You'll learn from each other and build stronger English habits together.
Before you go, don't forget to like this video. Share it with a friend who's learning English, leave a comment with your own example, and subscribe to Talk Fluent so you never miss another practical lesson that helps you sound more like a native speaker.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We hope this lesson makes unless, and if not, feel much easier the next time you hear them or use them in conversation. Keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and keep enjoying the journey of learning English. See you next time.